Good evening, everyone. I'm David Eglin, President of the Society for Contemporary Art at the Art Institute of Chicago. We are really excited to welcome all of you to tonight's program with Beverly Fishman. Before we turn the camera over to Programming Chair Patty Sternberg, I want to take a few moments and highlight some of our upcoming SCA programming. On March 23rd, we're excited to welcome influential video artist Charles Atlas, who we had to postpone last spring due to COVID. We are very pleased that we were able to reschedule this event and look forward to a most interesting presentation with him. Then on April 22nd, we have a members only event centered around the publication that was produced in conjunction with the upcoming exhibition, Ray Johnson, Care Of, which opens at the Art Institute this fall. This will be a sneak peek into this groundbreaking show and catalog featuring a discussion among the exhibition's two curators, Caitlin Haskell and Jordan Carter, who will be in conversation with the catalog's designer Irma Bloom. The highlight of every SCA season is our annual meeting and acquisition vote, where our membership votes on a work of art to purchase for the museum's permanent collection. This year, the meeting and vote will take place on May 18th in a virtual format like last year. However, this year, we are going to make the works available for in-person viewing at an off-site location in Chicago. More details on this will be forthcoming. For information on any of our upcoming programs, please refer to the SCA website. Now let me turn the camera over to Programming Chair Patty Sternberg, who will introduce tonight's speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Tonight we will hear Detroit-based artist Beverly Fishman, followed by a Q&A session facilitated by my fellow SCA board member, Dirk Dennison. For more than 3 decades, Beverly Fishman has adopted the language of abstraction to explore the body, issues of identity, and contemporary culture. Her artwork utilizes imagery drawn from science, medicine, and the pharmaceutical industry to promote inquiry into the effects of these institutions on both individuals and society. Beverly's work has been the subject of over 35 solo exhibitions at galleries in New York, London, Paris, Berlin, Thessaloniki, Chicago, St. Louis, Los Angeles, and Detroit, and has also been shown at the Chrysler Museum, the Detroit Institute of the Arts, the Toledo Museum of Art, the Columbus Museum of Art, among others. She is a recipient of many awards, including the National Academy of Design Academician Award, Anonymous Was a Woman Award, the Hassam Speaker Betts and Simons Purchase Award, American Academy of Arts and Letters, a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship, a Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation Award, an Artist Space Exhibition Grant, an NEA Fellowship Grant, and more. Please join me now in warmly welcoming Beverly Fishman. And remember to submit your questions throughout the program via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Here I go, making a mess already. Hi, everyone. I want to thank the Society for Contemporary Art for having me. It's a great privilege. It's an honor to be here. And I first would like to, here I go. Okay. I'd first like to read just a small paragraph, and then I will talk about the work. My art examines the relationship between color, form, and human identity while synthesizing subjective and mechanical processes. Throughout my career, I've been interested in exploring abstraction and juxtaposing formal and material investigations with questions about the transformation of human beings through science and technology. I've always worked in multiple media and combined representation with abstraction. Painting, however, has been at the center of my practice. I have developed hybrid processes that integrate subjective color choices and gesture with mass reproduction and industrial fabrication. My overall subject is how science, technology, and medicine affect both the body and the mind, how they represent, idealize, and stereotype us, and how they change us. In the 80s, I analyzed the sensorial body through sculptural form. I was not interested in what we looked like. I was interested in everything underneath the skin. These large, sort of bloody, visceral objects were part of the question, who am I? The question for me was always physical. It had nothing to do with appearance. I wasn't interested in how we looked. I was interested in uh, basically everything that medicine would show me and science about who we were. In the later 80s, I started using a black and white Xerox machine. For those of you who are old enough to know what that is, I mean, it was a tabletop Xerox machine. And I feminized the machine. What I did was I thought about this small tabletop machine as being reproductive and generative, just like the female body, the human body. And so these are hundreds and hundreds of pieces of collage that are put together on 7-foot painting structures. Every image that you're looking at is microscopic. So I moved from viscera and the body into what I saw through the microscope. And what interests me now when I look at that and through medicine and technology is how romantic these images look to me. And as technology has changed, my work has evolved. So I never followed style, I followed content. These were small groups of clusters where they were circular, that dealt with the eye, the microscope, the telescope, the way in which we viewed these images. They became much larger at 8 feet in diameter. I was given the opportunity at the Detroit Institute of Art to do an intervention. I was interested in the armor because at the time armor was developed, humankind thought it could save us. But we understand now that the skin is permeable, that disease can happen through the skin, and that the armor was not so effective. I also was interested in bringing together new technologies into that museum. The work followed in what I call the ID series in 1998. This work was based on the morphologic structure of cells, which is just the shape of cells without thinking about its use or function. And so those internal pieces were the nuclei, and these shapes were about 9 inches each. And I had a practice of doing one each day. They then in turn became these large conglomerations of paintings. I saw painting as needing the wall and using the wall as a site. So the wall was never passive for me. The wall was a specific site in which to engage. These pieces were around 180 elements. There were plastic templates that were made so that they looked unstable. They looked like they could move. They looked like they could shift. I was interested in the instability of who we were and how a minute shift in our cells could alter the rest of our lives. This piece is called Whack. There's an accompanying piece called Crack. So in a way, I was making sort of fun of Whack and Crack because I was thinking a lot about how mental illness comes about and how the cells can minutely shift and everything can look so beautiful under the microscope and then cause a cataclysmic change. This piece is called Fever, and that's a detail of the piece. These are color collage using a color copier. and also hand painting. I was mimicking technology, and technology was mimicking painting. These were collage on wood. These were large, what I called cluster paintings. And that's a detail again. I moved in 1999 to what I saw in our culture as really problematic. I started reading a lot about the cure, and especially with women, we were sold certain medications. We were told to relax. If we became too excited or too vocal or too extreme, we weren't fitting into the norm that, let's say, culture wanted. And these pieces were made using forms from original pills. So they were appropriated from pills that existed. They were very small. You could hand hold them. They were cut and shaped from wood back in the day when there was no CNC or none of that technology. So they were very much handmade and then hand cast. So this piece is called Just Relax, 135 elements. And this is all the pills you could take to relax. And some of you might know some of these. The cutout V is Valium, the H is Haldol. If you're taking Haldol, you really need to relax. This piece is called Feel Good, and it's cast resin and paint. This was my most kind of product painting. It was based on Prozac, but I did not like the shape of Prozac, so I actually feel like I made it like more beautiful. They were like candy. They were seductive. I was studying how the pharmaceutical industry was selling us wellness as well as illness. So they had us coming and going. And anyone who's in the pharmaceutical industry who markets pharmaceuticals understands what I'm speaking about, although they won't use this language. Am I Blue is based on all pills that help with depression. This is my first really environmental piece in a different way, using light conditions. So this piece is called Sweet Dreams Lullaby. And these are all medications that are used, all pills that are used for insomnia, which I then had and probably still continue to have. The piece glowed, so it didn't need any special lighting. It just needed regular light to sort of juice up the pigments. And then when all the lights were off, it would put me to sleep as a lullaby and the piece would fade within 15 minutes. Drugstore series came about. These are larger, and I did an exhibition out in Los Angeles at Post Gallery, and it was called Drugstore because there were antacids to antipsychotics, just like a drugstore. They lit up. By day, they were juicy, bright, colorful, and by night on the right, they showed this vaporous glow. And the vaporous glow had to do with, for me, something chemical, something potentially ominous, but also something just that transformed us, that could transform our minds and bodies. I really stopped that body of work because of a death in the family. I had become allergic to the resin myself, which happens to a lot of artists. And I could no longer work with the resin, and I was employing people to work with me. And I wanted to be more alone and not deal with others and dealing with that level of communication. And so I started thinking so much about the pharmaceuticals and looking at technology and the way medicine was imaging us, and how medicine started imagining us technology was more like signage. So if you think about what happened you're in a hotel room, you're in a hospital room, and you're looking at these black screens, and there's this electric codes coming across this square, and they're moving. They're constantly moving. And we all understand that that's an EEG or an EKG. And we all understand that if there's a flat line that goes across, it means the body has died or we're in cardiac arrest. And so I was interested in how these images, like the purple EKG, was speaking to us now as codes, as science, and in the fragmentation, talking about the body in its totality. And the other thing that was going on in my thinking was how science was really, not medicine, was really fragmenting us. So we become less about a holistic approach and more about, if your knee hurt, you went to the knee doctor. And if your head hurt, you went to the head doctor. And that there were very few times, and I think we've come back to this whole idea of the holistic approach, but there were moments where I think medicine and science were really fragmenting us. The other thing that's going on in this work, and it's vinyl, it's signed vinyl collaged on powder coated aluminum, is that these pieces were broken apart. And so there was space between them. And I was thinking a lot about the multiple screen, the way in which we see this information. So I was very aware of the computer, how this kind of technology was imaging our biological, our biology, and also speaking in a very abstract way. They were monitors, multiple monitors, and they were moving. And so I wanted this experience of them kind of flickering across the screen. Yet at close proximity, these were all very thick collaged vinyl, signed vinyl. This piece was actually, I believe, in Chicago at Stephanie Skestos Gallery when I had an exhibition there. And again, I wanted this color to make your eye flicker, just like the image flickered across the screen. In 2000, I started developing wallpaper. In 2007, I actually printed some of the wallpaper out. This wallpaper was called molecule wallpaper. The language of the text is DNA sequencing. I was interested in how to erase boundaries between a painting and the environment. This was a wallpaper called Vertigo. And at the top, it was very optical, black and white. And at the bottom, the wainscoting had DNA sequencing, EEGs, EKGs. So a moving kind of bottom text that was continuously informing us with different representations of the body. I moved from that kind of dense materiality to polished stainless steel because I wanted somehow to erase the boundary between us, the viewer, and the painting and the environment. And so with this became neuron spikes, DNA, different kinds of coding that also were fragmented, and the fragmentation of our reflection didn't really complete the image, but spoke about how we were part of it. We became part of that. In 2010, I went back to the glow-in-the-dark resin pills, but I added ecstasy. And the reason I added ecstasy was in the time that I had stopped thinking about big pharma, I realized that the underground world, or not so underground world, of drug use and drug production was very, very strong. And I decided that the kind of brands that the drug dealers were using were kind of the same thing as the big pharma. They were there to hook you into their products. And this was a group that glowed. The smile smirk face back there is sort of like the piece that says, you know, if you fall for this, I will get you. At the same time, I was still doing these very dense enamel painted small silk screens cobbled together with incidents of irregularities and incidents of the body and the hands. In the middle panel, where you see these diamonds floating, that is actually an output of neuron spikes. So for a lot of people who don't look at this kind of imagery, they think it's purely abstract. In a way, it speaks to clinicians and others in a very real way. These were some of the paintings. The stripes were all based on barcodes. They were taken from barcodes of pharmaceutical containers. So very little in these paintings was actually abstract. In 2010, I was awarded a glass residency at the Toledo Museum, and they told me I could do what I wanted and I could experiment. And within a month or two, I realized I wanted to make this huge pill spill. And I used the capsule as an abstract form in the sense that the capsule in and of itself is a delivery system. It delivers medication, but it delivers probably hundreds of medication. So they were like placebos. You could pick the one that you loved and feel good about it without it telling or showing what medication it was, like the way that the pills were branded in the resin. This piece was called Artificial Paradise. These were all hand blown. And I added tablets because I thought tablets were another form that suggested many, many medications, yet still remained abstract. And this is a detail. I then also did what I called pill boxes. And so groupings were put into these plexi boxes the way fancy jewelry is put behind the counter, meaning there was no way to touch it. And I believe that the pill boxes created more desire. So the things that you couldn't get to. So the cheaper jewelry at the top of the jewelry counter, you could touch and try on, but the really good stuff you couldn't get to. And so I was looking at strategies of desire and how pharmaceuticals and advertising were using desire. So we were interested in pills we didn't even know we should be interested in. We took pills that, and I'm saying we in general, that we didn't even need to take. This was at the Detroit Institute of Arts. This is one of the several places that Pill Spill traveled and changed configuration. And that picture shows sort of like my palette. I know painters have palettes. This would be the hundreds of pills that I would have made so that I could pick and choose. This was very costly. The way I work is sort of like I need a lot of excess. In Miami, I was given a solo booth and I decided to blow up the pharmaceuticals from the resin, smaller 9 by 11 inch, into these larger urethane painted wooden structures. And what I was attempting to do was to show how drug dealers branded their product for brand loyalty the way that this kind of modernist, pure form, real pharmaceuticals were branded. But I didn't feel that it was understood. I think the people that would go up and say, oh, I love Bart, or I took that smile face when 20 years ago as X. But the one thing I want to point out is Obama over there. And Obama, as far as I know, is the only living person or president that's ever been put on the face of, at the time, of an ecstasy pill. And because he registered cool, and he registered cool with a younger audience. And this is significant because this is one of the only times that a president really spoke to youth. And people didn't believe me. And I said, and you don't have to believe me. Google Obama ecstasy and it will come up. And that's Big Bart, who's blue, 5 feet, and has little nubbins at the top, and people don't understand, why didn't I change it? In fact, the person I worked with wanted to make it more, quote, authentic. And I kept saying, no, 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 we're copying the drug maker. We're copying. So that's blank Bart, and that's a skeleton. And there were many, many Barts. And to this day, I know it's 213 in this, but I'm dying to do a Bart show, because I think it's shocking how many, this is Puffy Bart, and how many, quote, artists or craftsmen or whatever you want to call drug dealers who decide, what their brand is going to be. I was given an exhibition at the Chrysler Museum, and they had a lot of things that they wanted in the exhibition. And I honestly look at this exhibition feeling like it was overloaded, but it was a long conversation and I agreed. And they really wanted, they kept asking me about a diabetes pill. And I thought that was really interesting. They said, so many people today have diabetes. Can you please make one? So this is a diabetes pill. I thought it was really interesting. And the conversation that I had in Chrysler was that many, many people knew what these pills were. The one on the back wall that's red, ruby red and gold, is for insomnia. The dark blue one is trazodone, is for depression. And then I also made, for this exhibition, I had a flame worker make 1-inch glass pills. And there are literally 100 of them. And people wanted to steal them. They tried to take the plexiglass box off. It was incredible. So they are only 1 inch, and that's 100 of them. Big Pharma at the Columbus School of Art, the curator was someone who I really love, Michael Goodson. And he asked me to do an exhibition on Big Pharma, and we called it Big Pharma. And I started to look at Big Pharma really carefully. And a lot of the way these shapes are formed are not abstract. They are formed by thinking about Dividose, the design that is scored. These pills are all scored to take different amounts of them, so you can break them apart. So a lot of the choices that I'm making are from the design of the actual object. The color is totally subjective, but I was interested in this super high intensity color that kind of was electric, that was chemical. And that I show you for scale, because I realized that I should have put in a few more pictures. I'm 5, 6.5, so that you can see the kind of form. I look at this as like, an Albers on acid. Nick Cave came to me offering me an exhibition at the Q Art Foundation in 2017. He has become more and more a great friend, and also a mentor to me. And we're extremely close. And I asked him to mentor me during this exhibition. So he came back and forth to New York. I was living in New York at the time, and I was on a sabbatical. And this was the exhibition that took place in 2017 where I started to think about not only breaking apart the pills. So in the last exhibitions, you see them in their totality, but also thinking about fragments. And at the time, I was thinking about two pills and this idea of stacking, which is a term that's used for taking a pill with another pill. So what I'm showing here is the way that they break apart. And this was 10 feet long. This is a collage, and this is exactly how I come up with the color. I make tons and tons of handmade collages that are pretty raw, and that's the finished piece. And then I take apart the color, and I work with two people now, but at the time, one person, and who I've worked with for, I don't know, 10 years at this point, who color matches. So this is not done by using formulas. This is done by the eye. And so I work with a highly sophisticated eye that can look at color. And in the show at Kavi Gupta's called Chemical Sublime, this is the first time I started thinking about polypharmacy, which was in the news and is very disturbing because by the time you're 60, 65, the average person is on 5 medications. By the time you're 80, you may be on up to 18. And at the time you're on 18 or even 5, sometimes what you're doing is you're taking a pill or a fragment of a pill to counteract the adverse reaction to another pill or another drug combination. So these are fragments of pills now. And so they're more abstract. So there are whole forms and there are fragments. The holes cut out in them is talking about what is missing or what is unseen. And they're usually chemically charged with a fluorescent glow. These are some of the pieces in the show. I came out to Kavi's space to look at the space, thinking about how to situate the work. And as time has gone on, I think more and more about the environment that these are going to be in and the scale they need to be. This is about I think an 8 or 9 foot painting, and it's a stacked 3 pharmaceuticals. All my titles are untitled with the description of the illness that's inside. So this one might be called Untitled, Antipsychotic, Insomnia, Anxiety. I bring the title into the piece to speak about the body and its condition. In 2018, I was offered this mural. When I accepted it, I thought the actual building was flat, and I was like super excited. Then I got in front of this building that had all these balconies, and it was so intense. And it's 175 feet, the mural, and the mural's called Rise. And in 2018, there was so much excitement about Detroit, so much energy. I was thinking a lot about techno music. I was thinking about like assembly lines. I was thinking about all the ways in which commerce was happening and an industry was happening. And I also used the blue sky as the backdrop for the color. That's a detail. And then I was given an opportunity to do a small mural. I say small, maybe that's 12 feet. I will be doing a huge mural commission for the Eli Broad Museum in Michigan for the opening in January, and it will be probably 150 feet in its totality or more. In 2018, I had an exhibition in New York, my first one with Miles McHenry, a gallery in what I consider their smaller space. I started using this matte finish. I actually started using that in dose, where the matte finish sort of sucks the light out and the gloss reflects. And so again, it's kind of destabilizing in the sense of you're not sure where things begin and end. That's the collage. So I think people are sort of surprised how raw the collages are, or how handmade in reaction or in conversation with the actual finished work. That's the collage. I dare try. That's the large piece. I'm not interested in mimicking what needs to happen in the final stages. The final stages of production and the fabrication are to mimic the fabrication of the pharmaceuticals and the design and the promise of being better, or the promise of a better future. Uh-oh, what did I do? Sorry. I'm stuck. Ah. This show happened in September. It was called I Dream of Sleep. It was a meditation on the end of life. My older sister was very ill, and I stayed with her at the hospital for several weeks, and she passed on New Year's Eve, actually, December 2018. I decided that I couldn't do what I thought I was going to do. I needed to, I just felt completely different. And those of you who have suffered loss know how one can feel completely changed from an experience. She actually was the thesis of my whole life. When she was a teen, she had multiple physical issues and was on multiple medications. And it was an issue of quality of life versus quantity of life. She then, in her 60s, some of her organs became deteriorated and no longer were able to filter her medication. And she basically was poisoned by the medication. And I couldn't believe that I had always thought about the cure as well as the disease. The color was based on what I saw in her room and what I saw her wearing. And it was quite meditative. The color was gray, white, these very muted tones. The sculpture in the middle of the room were things I had been working on for about 3 years. A lot of times with my work, I work on something for years and I hold on to it until it makes sense to me. I'm having trouble. Sorry. Okay, here I go. These are large pieces. They're maybe 115 inches. The color in the exhibition was color I saw. It was color I felt. This is an antidepressant pill with an empty, and it was completely empty with a vaporous glow. These pieces are large. They're 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet. They're multiple pills. They're multiple fragments. The title of the show, I Dream of Sleep, is on the left. The title came to me and would not leave me, and I'm not someone who titles exhibitions, so it was kind of strange. And I felt like I was collaborating with my sister. And yes, I believe in other powers. And I really believed that she was working with me. It's the first time I had, and this was the white room, which was a very meditative room. And the large piece, this was one of the white pieces. This is a large white piece. It's about 8 or 9 feet tall. It's untitled Pain, Pain, Pain. This form is an antidepressant. It's trazodone. Trazodone has many shapes and forms. I am continuing to make sculpture very slowly. A few of them are going to be much larger. I'm doing something at the Dayton Contemporary where there would be larger works. My Gavlak show in Los Angeles is now opening May 1st. So I wanted to say that. And these are the pieces that will be in some of the pieces in the LA exhibition. They are Pink and Blush and Flesh. This is untitled Anxiety. That's a detail. Another untitled Anxiety, one open missing dose. The exhibition will be titled something like Love Letter to LA or Love Letters to LA. That silvery oval is a kind of soft chrome paint that looks almost like it's deteriorating, but when you stand in front of it, you see yourself. And this is kind of the largest piece in the exhibition. And a detail. And then I just added some studio shots so you could see how I work, which is on a lot of different collages with a lot of different cut paper all around me. And what you're seeing here are like pieces that I just start and I put them on the floor. I make a ton of cutouts. So this is how my mind thinks and works, but mainly I research on the computer. And these are my upcoming solos happening within probably the next 12 months or 13 months. And I thank you so very much for coming to hear me speak. Thank you.
Beverly, yay! This is a thunderous applause from your huge fan group. There are over 300 people listening today. And I just want to say, wow, wow, wow.
Thank
wow
you.
For the sheer power of your work, the visual imagery. Wow for your production. It is amazing the amount of work that you have produced. And it was such a treat for all of us to have you share with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Dirk.
And it's super special for me to have the opportunity for us to have a little conversation. I feel very fortunate that our friendship is now, I think, going into over 30 years. Since
it's incredible.
Yeah.
It is 30 years. It's 30 years.
And Suzanne Hilberry
Yes.
Gallery, we met first. And of course, with your long commitment and engagement at Cranbrook Academy, of course, in my roots and my heart as well. And we've collaborated obviously over the years on installations as well. And I've been so happy to work with your work in my work. And I think that's why they asked me to lead the conversation here with you today. I have a few things I want to talk to you about, and then we're going to go to audience questions. So I can remind the audience there that we're I'm simultaneously looking at the questions you guys are asking, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But I want to start off with color, because you are, it is color. Color is in part of every mention that you have of the work. I mean, adding to the very deep understanding of science and pharmacology that you have shared with us tonight, the personal relationship and the sort of body, relationship with the drugs that we have, personal and physical. But you are a genius at color. And I think we would all like to hear, besides your just, oh, I'm sitting at the table working it out. It's not that easy, I don't think. Wondering whether there is a color theory for you. Is there something like Albers? Is there something, that you know creates a certain effect, that we respond to as humans in certain ways, that you are looking at in the, obviously, juxtaposition, because you've explained that you're looking at the accurate color of the drugs, if I understand correctly, but you also, of course, have the glow, that aura that is then so present in every stage, in most stages, I should say, of the work. But yeah, tell me about your color. Are you there? Beverly, you've gone on mute. You have to turn your speaker on again. Can you hear me? Oh, here we go.
Still mute.
Still mute. Can you see the little button in the corner? There you go. Okay, great. Thanks for the technical help. I've got my help here too. Beverly, going back to the question.
I studied color in undergrad, but what color offered in terms of Albers and Itten and some of the color theorists were a certain set of colors, not including a lot of the technology colors, the technological colors, the industrial colors. They didn't exist or they weren't being used. So when you add any kind of industrial color, like a fluorescent, a phosphorescent, there's these colors that flip-flop, that shift and change that I'm using now as you move around the piece. Those didn't exist or they weren't being taught, okay? So color theory could only be taught to a certain extent. And then if you added any kind of fluorescent, it changed everything. And my thought was, I didn't want to repeat Albers. I wasn't interested in Albers, and I certainly knew the op artists, and their understanding of the way the eye could, the color could flicker, and but I was looking for something else, and what that something else was the content. So the content came first, and then what kind of color? I did look at the pills, but only in the show I Dream of Sleep did I actually use any of the real color of pills.
I see. Okay, I misunderstood that. Okay.
Well, I mean, I did, but only there. No, you're never going to see this fluorescent yellow with electric red with a stripe. Look,
well,
I would take that pill because I would think that was cool. You know what I mean? The drug industry should have me design. They're missing out, I mean, I studied
blue part would be
everybody would take fucking Blue Bart, right? At 5 feet, we just would start licking it. We'd go up to the wall and rub it and we'd feel better. Well, there's a whole placebo effect that I didn't even get into that started at, there was a whole study at Harvard. This guy, he was a quack. And, now there's so much understanding about placebo and how, the size of a pill or the color of a pill works better. He's not a quack at all. In fact, pharmaceutical companies now utilize his information to make more powerful choices.
Yeah.
So placebo is something that I understand very well. I feel so much better when I carry a Prada handbag than when I carry a knockoff. I won't wear a knockoff. Color shape affects how we feel and the effect. So everything in our lives are designed, everything.
Yeah.
And pharmaceuticals are completely thoroughly thought through because it's a multi hundreds of $1 million industry. And so the color is suggestive. And recently I've been interested in the actual colors, not using them in their totality because that's boring to me, but thinking about like lavender. Oh my God, lavender is a kind of color that is so off-putting to me. It's kind of like beautiful and ugly. And is it a happy color? Not really. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of weird. And so I love using color that's surprising to me. That actually surprises me. I'm not interested in thinking I know what it's going to be. And I think that was Albert's whole life's work was, you know, surprising himself and asking questions. Did I answer you?
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's I'm interested in the relationship between the placebo in drugs. It's where one is actually doing something chemically and one is not, but your mind over matter, your mind is sort of taking you to a place that you want to go or you need to go. And that is true of your artwork as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, when one takes in the visual image and lives, especially if you live with the image, I would say that placebo, I think it has sort of in the drug world, it has kind of like, well, it's not real. You know, it's not real. It's, you know, just faking you out. But actually, as you describe it, which I think is so beautiful, is it's actually bringing some sort of elevation, some endorphin, some pleasure.
It is real. Okay. It's science. When science figures out a way to make it even more rational, but they've done studies where you hold a pill in your hand and they set you up with EKGs so that they can see your brain waves. Okay. So that they can understand how your brain is responding. And a lot of people, when you have a headache and you go to take your Advil or whatever you're going to take and you put it in your hand, they've said it literally starts working because your chemicals in your brain start working. And the Eastern medicine understands how much the body can really do and is expansive. And I think we need to look at those approaches. I know when I am very anxious, if I sit by the ocean, I think of the ocean as a placebo. I will start to really relax. I mean, I'll just go. And so I imagine the ocean. Beautiful. Well, what's happening in my brain? Something's happening in my brain. I'm calming down. I didn't have to take a Xanax or a Valium to necessarily calm down. So it is, it's an interesting.
Part of it is that the you know, some exposure is a training. It like sort of gives you a pathway to a new set of standards, a new set of emotions or feelings. And then like visiting the ocean, if you have never visited the ocean, you probably don't have that effect that you're describing. But once there, you can carry it with you wherever you go.
And your brain, and the other thing is your brain is way more powerful than we even understand. And, you know, I think we use a tiny bit of our brain power, and the visualization that artists have, that researchers have, that philosophers have, that scientists have. I think there's like a question, and then you're following this track into the unknown. And there's so much we still don't understand about the brain and its ability. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, creative
So
people
let me,
probably know the most because we envision things out of nothing.
well, we know that there's something more,
Yeah.
that it's not just status quo. You can do something, you can add something, you can look at it a different way, and you'll discover.
Mhm.
That's what
But
creativity is, right?
I do think art can be like a placebo. When I am walking towards a museum, I have an expectation or a thought that I'm going to be transformed,
Yeah,
that I'm going to
yeah.
have a transformation. That's what great art does for me. I'm
But that
transformed. And
that's
so
what we're,
walking up those stairs, something in my brain is already getting me into a mode for transformation, right? I mean,
so Beverly, I want to talk to you then about that exact thing.
mhm,
You've gone through the doors and you go into a space. The relationship you have to space, architecture, of course, I have to bring that to the table.
yeah.
And the interesting way that your objects move from the wall to the floor and back, and now once again, back to the floor. Um, and of course, the aura, the phosphorescence that you that engages the wall as part of the visual experience. Um, and then talk about how I'm interested if you could share with us a little bit about your exhibition programs and how you work towards an exhibition. You showed a lot of venues that were sort of presented as new moments in your work, but it's all kind of wrapped up in having a space specific installation and how you choose works, for that situation.
I have to be honest, I never understood the space until I worked with Nick Cave in 2017. And Nick spoke about walking into the space. What did I want to see as the viewer? And moving through space. And he, all of a sudden, like a light bulb, I mean, seriously, a light bulb went off. I thought, I've been working with individual works, and those parameters became sort of like the interior space and the exterior. But now, in the last couple shows and in moving forward, I'm creating color stories, color questions. So I already know what Dayton is going to look like in my mind. I've started to imagine that. And I have already started a major work for Kavi Gupta's show for April of next year. So it can come back to my studio so I could experience it and see it. So that now moving forward, each exhibition either has to ask a question from me about color, about form, color and form, and that no two spaces can be the same experience.
Great.
They have to be very unique experiences.
But it's interesting, you also bring a new science to each one. You're looking at your subject matter in ever increasing detail. So we know each other, through Detroit and through Cranbrook, and your long involvement, tenure as artist in residence in painting. And I'd love for you to talk about that stewardship of the next generation and of the, how you balance between your own production and that now having stepped, with your busy career into full-time of making of art, what that transition has been like.
Well, when I was 4 years old, and I know I was 4 because my family has told me, that I announced to my younger brother and sister that I was going to be a teacher and I was going to be an artist. And on Saturdays, I had them sit and do my lessons. So not only did they have to go to regular school, they had to do Sister Beverly School on Saturdays. And I always wanted to be a teacher. I never planned on being the head of a graduate program. I taught children that were 3 and 4 years old. I taught 90-year-olds. I taught every single level, community college, you name it. And I found each group interesting in their, and you know, Cranbrook basically asked me to apply to the job, and I flew out and I said, wow, this is really something. I think I knew I was going to get the job. I had a sixth sense, and you know, between you and me, I have a sixth sense about
Yes.
certain things.
I've relied on it many times for important
Yes.
decisions in my life.
Yes, I've had, and so I knew it was mine. And then it was the case of, I knew I was going to take it. I mean, I knew when I got on the plane that it was an opportunity that I could never say no to. And the idea of mentoring younger artists, I think, kept me really young, really open. And a lot of faculty, a lot of artists can't say that. They pronounce this thing like, well, really good art stopped in 1947, you know? No, I thought there was great art, and there continues to be great art. And so I am friends with some of my younger artists, former students. They are great artists. And I think it was a gift for me to be able to do it. And I think, you know, I was 150% in. And when I felt like I couldn't be 150% in, I always said to myself, you're going to need to leave with the school, with your department at a high moment. And that's how I wanted to leave. And yet on Tuesday of this coming week, and next Tuesday, I am Zoom critiquing graduate painters. You know, yeah, I can leave, but I just need a little something.
That's great.
And
well, Beverly, we have quite a few questions,
okay.
And I think we'll answer a few, and then if you wouldn't mind, for those we don't get to, we'll email them to you, and we can distribute them to the people after.
Okay.
But the one question that's actually coming up is why medicine? Why this connection specifically to the pharmaceuticals?
Well, it started with the body. It didn't start with medicine. It started with the question, who am I? And so the story is a long story that now is with medicine. And I think if you think about what's going on with COVID and the vaccines, and how we basically traded TV advertisements ending for cigarettes 5 years later, 6 years later, with constant advertisements for pharmaceuticals that we don't even know what they're about, but we think we should take them, and we should spend half our time in the doctor's office talking about them. The doctor's like, no, you don't need this. Let's move on. Because for me, it is a topic that was personal, meaning I have grown up with, as I got older, 2 sisters with very severe brain disorders. And I realized that my cellular makeup allowed me to be me, and how a minute shift could shift your whole life. And it started there, and it continued to grow. And I think,
is that shift sometimes for positive? I mean, you see, you know, I think a lot of the titles make us sound like antidepressant. You know, it's like, oh, we're all depressed, but it's like actually
we actually are all depressed. Some of us just don't know it. Okay. If it was up to the pharmaceutical companies, they would make us all depressed. Okay. So we'd all take the medicine. I'm laughing and crying as I say it. Okay.
But at the same time, it sounds, you know, your relationship with them is also it's you've seen the benefits too.
Yes, 100%. It's about a conversation. It's about understanding what we never think about, never talk about. It's something that's given to us. We never read the paperwork that the pharmacy gives us. We just blindly take things. Um, we, it's about understanding that this is a huge part of our culture. And we can look at Purdue as a pharmaceutical company that has had a lot of effect on our country at this point.
Yeah.
I totally believe in medicine and its positives. And I think the work is a funny placebo in that if you look at it and you experience it, maybe you don't have to take it.
And so let's, another question is about kind of media, Instagram, COVID,
Yeah.
distanced existence, and how you've, engaged that, and how you're involved in it, and has it affected your work?
I am so fortunate. My studio literally is downstairs from where I live. So I was so fortunate that I never had to leave the house in order to be creative and do my work. I know there are many artists that were working in, basically on the kitchen table and were not allowed in their building. I worked every single day since COVID. I had exhibitions that were postponed, and I had fabrication that was postponed, and everything became kind of postponed at the same time. And then things have opened up, and that's sort of like the jam of the exhibitions for me right now. They're like, almost like jumbled. Instagram is fabulous for me. I enjoy it. I enjoy looking at other people's work, but it never ever takes the place of seeing work in person and experiencing it. Never.
No.
I mean, we make work. My work is for you to stand in front of it and walk around it. It was never for a picture. I am extremely old school. I want the experience, and you can't really get that in a small screen. You get a glimpse of something, but this is what we've been given during our life right now. And so it's sort of like, as creative people, how do we work with what we have? Not with what we don't have, but what we have.
Yeah. Beverly,
Yes.
would you ever, or have you ever done a portrait? What would a portrait be for you if someone commissioned you to do a portrait?
That's fabulous. So a portrait would be the sum total of the medications they are on. So I think that would be really great. In fact, I used to imagine in my pillboxes, collectors, what they were taking. And actually, if you go to someone and you go to their bathroom and their medicine cabinet, you know more about them than they ever want you to know. So never look in someone's medicine cabinet, okay? Because you will know.
Maybe you have.
Okay, you always keep your medicine cabinet locked. I made portraits when I was about 18 and 19 years old, and I actually kept some of them. And my family has one or two. And I did self-portraits, and I did portraits like a la Van Gogh, this intense, brooding, 18-year-old. But, really the question became bigger than just the appearance of someone or their outer skin. And for me, it became sort of more universal and tied us more together. Like, we're all made of guts and heart and these things. And it seemed like, for me, I don't want to say a bigger question, but a question that was expansive, that I didn't get caught up in. I could ask bigger questions.
Yeah.
Than But
Yeah, how
I
do we-
would,
how
I
do
would
we-
live, I would live with every Alice Neal painting. I would have a Hockney painting. I mean,
So are there certain artists that you that you have sort of in reference or that you revere?
oh, I revere so many artists. I mean, I am in love with so much work. If you follow me on Instagram, I tell people all the time, I love, love, love the work. Like I think it's really important to be positive and not hold back. And when you love something, let another artist know you love it. Why? Do you think you're too cool that you can't let somebody know how much you love their work? I mean, there's young artists I follow and I direct message them that I think the work is so provocative. And I just write to people.
Well, in Beverly, we all love you.
Oh God.
And it's such a treat to see your work tonight. And congratulations.
Thank you.
We really want to thank you for this time and for sharing and for the beauty and impact that your work brings to the world.
Thank
This has
you
been a
so
real
much.
treat. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So
Thank you
again,
so much for having
I'm
me.
applauding for this collective group of big fans. So
Thank you.
it's
been a
thanks so
great
much.
pleasure.
All right.
Right.
Great. Hope to see you soon.